Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today I'm going to talk about modern burn and do a deep dive on this archetype that has fluttered around tier 2 for the major part of the existence of modern. And I think with Scam and Tron at the top, burn is in a really good place right now. So in this video, I'm going to do a deck tech on burn, talk about how to play burn and some nuances with playing burn. And then I'm going to talk about flex slots in your deck building of your burn deck, show you my burn deck, and then do a sideboard guide for every deck in modern that is realistic that you'll play against. So this is the burn deck that I have been playing, and we're going to come back to this when we do the sideboard guide, but I'm also going to use it to talk about what the deck is all about. And I'm going to divide up the deck just a sec. So these are sort of the categories of this burn deck. The first category are creatures. These are aggressive, hasty creatures, two of the best one-drops, aggressive one-drops in the format. We have Monastery Swiftspear, which is a 1-mana 1/2 with haste and prowess. Prowess being whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And we have a whole mess of non-creature spells. So this is 2, 3, sometimes 4 power. And then we have Goblin Guide, which is a 1-mana 2/2 with haste. And whenever Goblin Guide attacks, defending player reveals the top card of their library. If it's a land card, that player puts it into their hand. So that's a downside. Most of the time, sometimes they'll give you information, which is kind of cool. But we're basically like, you have this downside because we want this 2-power, 1-drop haster. So we're going to be casting these guys early. The other big aspect of our deck are our burn spells. Now, Lightning Bolt, Lava Spike, Skewer the Critics, Rift Bolt, Boros Charm, and Skullcrack, we all want going face as much as possible. Now, sometimes we do have to remove our opponent's stuff. We have to point a Lightning Bolt or a Rift Bolt or something like that at a creature, but we want to be going face. This is our win conditions. And every turn, we should be doing math to see if we can win the race by going face instead of removing our opponent's creatures. Speaking of removing our opponent's creatures, we're also playing Searing Blaze, which is a card we really don't want to cast if we're not getting landfall. But with landfall, it deals 3 damage to our opponent and 3 damage to a creature just for 2 mana. So being able to burn face and kill a creature at the same time is super important. And then maybe a card that is a little weird but makes sense with some explanation is Roiling Vortex, which is 2-mana enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. And you can pay 1 mana to have your opponents can't gain life this turn. That last portion is relevant sometimes. Is a little weird because most of the time you only have 2, maybe 3 lands, so spending a mana on that or leaving it up is kind of weird. It's nice to deal a little bit of extra damage, but really we should be killing our opponent by the time Roiling Vortex has done its mana's worth in damage. We're really playing it for the no mana spent to cast a spell. Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. This counts for Living End. This counts for Crashing Footfalls. This counts for Evoke Elementals, which is all truly amazing. As far as our lands go, we're playing as many fetch lands as really possible for a couple of reasons. One, being able to filter lands out of our deck. We really want to max out at 3 lands. We never want to hit 4 to speak of. So being able to get lands out of our deck by fetching them out is super important. We're playing Sunbait Canyon and a Fiery Islet so that we can draw extra cards if we draw them as extra lands, or we can have them be the last lands that we play so we can play them and be able to draw a card and filter out those lands. And then there are actually some nuances with this deck. First off, you want to be playing your creatures first, because the longer these creatures spend on the battlefield, the more damage they're going to do. So you want to play them in the early turns so they have a chance of being on the battlefield for even longer. The second is to be aware of a non-bow. When Riftbolt comes off suspend, you are casting it for 0 mana, which means Roiling Vortex will deal 5 damage to you. It's super important to remember that. While filtering is super important, if you have a Searing Blaze in hand or a chance of drawing a Searing Blaze and it being good, normally it's better to just leave a fetch land uncracked if you have no lands in your hand, so that if you draw Searing Blaze, you can just crack the fetch land for a land, trigger landfall, and be able to cast a Searing Blaze to deal 3 damage. It feels really bad when you just crack a fetch land at the end of your opponent's turn, untap, rip Searing Blaze, and you have no way to trigger landfall. It's really bad. Especially if you're light on mana, try to cast Skewer the Critics for 1 mana as early as possible. Because if we cast our 1 mana spells and we never really hit our 3rd land, Skewer the Critics can become kind of awkward in our hand. That being said as well, Boros Charm has a lot of modes. We're basically never use Indestructible. It's possible we'll use it. 99% of the time, we're going to be dealing 4 damage to our opponent at instant speed. But sometimes we hit enough lands and we have enough spells, especially if we suspend a bunch of Rift Bolts in the same turn, we can get Monastery Swiftspear's power up to 4. and then casting Boros Charm, bringing its power up to 5, it's actually better to give Monastery Swiftspear double strike, especially if there's no chance of Monastery Swiftspear dying to a spell or something like that. This comes up incredibly rarely, but when it does, you feel like a genius. Also, make sure you do your sorcery speed burn spells as early as possible so you can leave instant speed stuff up. It's harder for our opponent to interact with like anything, whether it be life gain because we can leave Skullcrack up, or a counter magic because we can end step, Skullcrack them, they counter it, untap Boros Charm them, and they're still tapped down. And that's all like very, very good. And so sorcery speed stuff should be prioritized unless there's like a real fear of our opponent gaining life and we need to leave Skullcrack up. As far as our sideboard goes, Path to Exile is against decks that we really need to remove specific cards, things like Omnath, maybe Creativity decks, because if they ever hit an Archon that's like super, super bad for us, even though Smart Removal is kind of bad against Creativity, they have to do it as early as possible against us. Sanctifier Envic is mostly for scam. They can never remove it. We get to attack with it every single turn, and their scam stuff doesn't work. Smash to Smithereens for artifact decks like Hammer Time. Also decent against Hardened Scales, which is getting more popular. Wear Tear, we bring it in against the same decks, especially Hammer Time, but especially good against like every Urza Saga deck. And then Chalice of the Void is mostly for these Suspend decks. One of our worst matchups of popular decks is the Rhinos deck, just because they can put on a faster clock than us and actually interact with us where we can't interact with them. And being able to cast a Chalice for 0 means that they can no longer race us and they have to play us like a fair deck, which normally means we win. Even with Roiling Vortex in our deck, I think Rhinos is such a bad matchup and is so popular, we need to play 4 Chalice in our board as well. That being said, there's actually some deck building decisions you need to be making when playing Burn. These are our non-flex slots. These should be played in every single deck. Compared to the deck that I just showed you, the big things that are missing are Roiling Vortex 3 and 4 and Skullcrack 3 and 4 in the main deck. And in the sideboard, we have Chalice 3 and 4 and Smash to Smithereens number 3 missing in the sideboard. All of these cards you should be playing in your deck. There's essentially no decision to be made. But what cards can you choose from in those slots? So in the main deck, we need 4 slots. And of those 4 slots, you could be playing Roiling Vortex 3 and 4, Skullcrack 3 and 4, or Lightning Helix 1 and 2. Roiling Vortex is excellent if you think you're going to be playing against a lot of Cascade decks or a lot of Evoke Elemental decks like Scam or Omnath or something like that. Skullcrack is very good if you think you're going to be playing against a lot of life gain decks. Think Creativity, think Omnath, stuff like that. And Lightning Helix is excellent if you're going to be playing a lot of mirror matches or aggro decks like Zoo or even Hammer Time. They're all very good. So picking any 4 of these 6 cards is a correct deck to build. As far as the sideboard goes, you need to be picking 3 of these cards. Now, I really strongly feel that you should be playing 4 Roiling Vortex in the 75, again, because of how bad the Rhinos matchup is. So if you are not playing the main deck Roiling Vortex, you should probably be playing Roiling Vortex 3 and 4 in the sideboard. But we've already talked about a lot of these cards. Roiling Vortex for the Cascade decks and the Elementals decks, Smash to Smithereens for these artifact decks, Chalice of the Void again for Cascade decks, just like extra protection. And then we have Deflecting Palm for these like big heavy hitter decks. Think Titan. It's really good in the mirror match because it can stop a burn spell. Very, very good against Hammer Time coming in for 1 million. If you think you're going to be playing against those cards, I could see playing Deflecting Palm. Now, you should be picking 3 of these cards. Again, I really strongly feel you should be playing 4 Roiling Vortex 75, so if you decide on Lightning Helix and Skullcrack, you should be leaning towards Roiling Vortex, then picking 1 of these 3 cards. But if you're playing Roiling Vortex in the main like I am, that gives you a little bit more leeway in the sideboard. And now that we've talked about the deck overall, how the deck is played and some nuances with the deck, talked about flex slots in your deck building, let's talk about the sideboard guide. How I sideboard with my version of the deck against the deck that I think are playable in Modern. And hopefully you can use the lessons that I teach with my 75 on how to sideboard with your 75. First off, the most popular deck is Rakdos Scam. Against Scam, we're bringing in Sanctifier Envic. That's a big reason we're playing Sanctifier Envic. The card is irremovable, so we can attack for 2 every single turn, and it means they can't scam us or do anything weird. And I'm actually a fan of Path to Exile against this deck. Often they go really, really all in on one creature, and if we can remove that one creature, we kind of just win. However, what they don't do is gain life, so taking out Skullcrack is awesome. And frankly, they use their pitch elementals so early in the game that very often Roiling Vortex doesn't really do anything. But it can. You know, if the game happens to end up going long, they end up scamming us, we remove the scam, and now we're just kind of top decking. So I like removing 2 Roiling Vortex, and this is how I sideboard against Scam. The second most popular deck is 4-color Omnath. Against 4-color Omnath, I like bringing in Path to Exile just because removing the Omnath is super important. If they gain life off Omnath, we're in big trubs. And I like removing 2 Searing Blaze. It doesn't really remove anything. But we have no other cards on my sideboard I really want, so this is how I sideboard against Omnath. The third most popular deck is Crashing Footfalls. Against the Footfalls deck, we are bringing in the Chalice of the Voids, because we can just do it for 0 and make it so that they cannot race us. And we're not really interested in removing their Rhinos, so like taking out Searing Blaze, and this is how I sideboard against Rhinos. The fourth most popular deck is Yawgmoth. Against Yawgmoth, Roiling Vortex doesn't do that much besides the gain life effect, and I'm like kind of meh about that. So I like bringing in Path Exiles. We can break up some of the combo with Path Exile and while taking out something that doesn't deal a lot of damage in Roiling Vortex. So I sideboard against Yawgmoth. The fifth most popular deck is Hammer Time. Against Hammer Time, we are bringing in Smash to Smithereens because it kills the artifacts. We're bringing in Wear Tear because it kills the artifacts, Sigar's Aid, Urza Saga. And we're bringing in Path to Exile because it's really, really important that they don't like go all in on a creature and are able to kill us out of nowhere. As a rule, they don't really have cards that can gain them a bunch of life, so I like taking out some number of Skullcrack. However, they aren't casting cards for nothing besides Ornithopter, which I don't think it's important to have a sideboard against Ornithopter. So Roiling Vortex comes out first, and then we bring out a few Skullcrack. That's how I sideboard against Hammer Time. The sixth most popular deck is Murktide. Against Murktide, we want to take out the Roiling Vortexes is the biggest thing. And really the only card in our sideboard that is remotely good at all is Path to Exile, so that's how I sideboard against Murktide. The seventh most popular deck is the mirror match, is Burn. Against Burn, I like bringing in Sanctifier Envic, just because it's irremovable. It can infinite block the Goblin Guides of Monastery Swiftspears, which I'm a big fan of. And I like taking out Roiling Vortex. It's cool when you can kind of get them after, like, they suspend a Rift Bolt, you play Roiling Vortex, got them. I think that's a little too cute. It's really easy to play around, so this is how I am going to sideboard against Burn. The eighth most popular deck is Amulet Titan. Against Amulet Titan, Path to Exile is great because we can break up their combo. And then I'm a big fan of Smash to Smithereens because we can deal with the Amulet. And I'm a big fan of Wear Tear because we can deal with the Amulet and Dryad of Elysian Grove, just all the ways that they can interact with us. That being said, Searing Blaze kills effectively nothing besides the O3, and I'm not super interested in devoting time to killing that. And we also want to take out Roiling Vortex. I think Roiling Vortex does a little bit less, so we're going to keep in the one Searing Blaze, and this is how I sideboard against Amulet Titan. The ninth most popular deck is Living End. Against Living End, of course, we want the Chalices because it stops them from casting Living End. But I'm also a fan of Sanctifier Envic. Like, it's just kind of a cute creature. It stops them from putting Grief in the graveyard, stops them from putting Street Wraith in the graveyard, stops them from putting Oliphant in the graveyard. I've grown to like really like that. And we're going to be taking out Searing Blaze, and this is how I sideboard. And we're going to take out Searing Blaze because it doesn't really remove anything. And if we have to remove stuff with Searing Blaze, then something has gone horribly wrong or horribly right. So it's kind of irrelevant. And this is how I sideboard against Living End. The 10th most popular deck is Hardened Scales. Against Hardened Scales, we're bringing in all of our Artifact Hate. There we go. All of our Artifact Hate and the Path to Exiles. And, you know, we're going to be doing a lot of this stuff. Roiling Vortex does effectively nothing except for, like, Welding Jar, I guess. And Skullcrack doesn't really do anything besides 2 mana, deal 3 damage. And so this is how I sideboard against Hardened Scales. The 11th most popular deck is Tron. Against Tron, I like bringing in all of the Artifact Hate, but I'm not a big fan of Wear Tear just because I want to be dealing as much damage as possible as fast as possible. However, Searing Blaze does literally nothing against the deck, so we do need to bring in some number of Wear Tear. And Roiling Vortex is very medium, so we kind of want to shave as many as possible. And so we kind of have to bring in all of the Wear Tear, but it's fine. That's how I sideboard against Tron. The 12th most popular deck is the Mono-Black Coffers deck. Against Coffers, I like bringing in Sanctifier Envic because, again, it's irremovable. It's very, very good. And I like taking out Searing Blaze. It only deals with Orcish Bowmasters. I'm not super worried about it. So I sideboard against Coffers. The 13th most popular deck is Domain Zoo. Against Domain Zoo, I like bringing in the Path to Exiles because they're looking to race us. We can kill a big creature at a good time. It might be good enough. And Roiling Vortex is just way too slow, but we really have no other cards to bring in, so this is what we sideboard against Domain Zoo. And then the last deck we're going to be talking about is Indomitable Creativity. What a fall from grace recently. Against Creativity, I like just bringing in the Path to Exiles. Because if they ever Archon us, then we're in a lot of trouble. Normally they have to turn 4 Archon us and hope for the best. And if we can interrupt that, then we're in great shape. That being said, they can't kill us super quick, so it can make them not gain life. It's great. So we love Roiling Vortex and love Skullcrack. It's important we keep Searing Blaze in because we need as much interaction as possible. And so I actually cut some creatures because they have infinite removal, and that's how they're hoping to beat us, is us have a creature hand. That's how I sideboard against creativity. So there you have it. Modern Burn. How to play the deck, nuances with the deck, flex slots with the deck in your deck building, and a sideboard guide for all of the decks that I think are playable in Modern. If you like videos like this and love deep dives like this, especially since now it's Modern season, I'm going to be doing a lot of Modern decks, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.